For years, pressure on Iran was designed to force negotiations. But during a tense exchange on Capitol Hill, one senator argued that something has fundamentally changed. According to him, the administration's strategy has left the American economy and the global economy waiting on a deal with Iran. As long as the Strait of Hormuz remains closed, consumers, businesses, and markets continue to feel the impact. But as Secretary Marco Rubio responded, three major questions emerged. Is the economy now being held hostage to these negotiations? What would it take to reopen one of the world's most important shipping routes? And is the real battle no longer about the strait itself, but about Iran's nuclear program? Let's take a closer look.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Secretary, for being with us today. Despite the differences that existed between Republicans and Democrats prior to this administration on how to approach Iran's nuclear program, the theory was basically the same, that we were going to impose significant harm on the Iranian economy in order to force them to the table to negotiate. What is happening now is fundamentally different. This war and the administration's decision to blockade has now held the entire world economy and the U.S. economy hostage to the ability to negotiate an agreement with Iran. This is why the entire country is seized by the question of when there will be an agreement, because apparently until there is an agreement, the Strait of Hormuz remains closed. There is a cost to the Iranian economy, but now there is a devastating cost to the U.S. economy. It has been indecipherable, the information coming from the administration, especially in the past several weeks, as we get signals that a deal is imminent. The president said yesterday he's bored by the negotiations. He doesn't care whether we get a deal. I think it's really important for us to understand what your bottom lines are, what you're asking for in this negotiation, what commitments you need Iran to make in order for you to release the blockade, and we hope for them to release the blockade as well. So give us a little insight into what your bottom lines are, what is going to get the strait reopened, because this is kind of the only question that matters for American consumers right now. And every day we get wildly different signals from the president as to whether he even is engaged in this question as to whether the strait is going to reopen.
Yeah, I think your question gets right to the heart of the matter. So I think it's a good question. Let me first bifurcate two things. The only reason there's a blockade, the only reason why there's a U.S. blockade is because Iran has closed they're firing on commercial ships, and they've mined large segments of Hormuz, international waters. And so the blockade is only against Iranian ships. And it's very simple. The notion is if no one's ships are going to get out, then Iran's ships aren't going to get out either. We can't live in a world in which they get to close the straits and tell everybody, pay us a toll or we'll blow you up, but their ships get to go out unfettered. So that's the reason why there's a blockade. There wouldn't have been a blockade if Iran had agreed to do what they said they would do when the ceasefire kicked in, which is they were going to open the straits. So let me just focus on the straits for a moment. Number one, what they're doing is unlawful and illegal. There isn't a country on earth, other than Iran, and maybe Oman that flirted with it, who's in favor of what Iran is doing in the straits. The Chinese are against it. The Russians are against it. Everyone is against it. The whole world is against it. So condition number one is they have to reopen the straits. And reopening the straits means the following. Ships can sail through international waters the way they can do through other choke points around the world without being fired upon, without paying a toll. That's condition number one.
At this point, the discussion shifts from the economic consequences to the negotiation strategy itself. The senator repeatedly presses for details, arguing that consumers need answers now. Rubio, however, maintains that reopening the strait is only the first step. His position is that Iran must first stop threatening commercial shipping and restore safe passage through the waterway. But as the questioning continues, another issue begins to emerge. Reopening the strait may not be the end of the negotiations, it may only be the beginning.
The strait is closed because of our decision to invade Iran. This is a consequence of our military action. So I guess I'm not interested in litigating that question. We all know why the strait is closed, because you took military action against Iran, and we knew ahead of time that that would be their likely response. The question is, how are we going to get it reopened? Are you going to drive a bargain that is so tough and so hard that the strait remains closed. So how are we going to get it open?
The first thing, that is a predicate to anything else happening. The straits have to be reopened. So the way to think about it is this. If Iran wants to be able to move its oil again through the strait, they will have to reopen the straits. If they refuse to do so, then we have other options available to us, but we would prefer to negotiate the opening of this, which means
tell us about the negotiations. What do you need from them in order to get the strait reopened? We need the strait reopened tomorrow.
Well, what needs to happen is very simple. They need to announce that they will no longer fire on commercial ships that are going through or threaten to fire on ships, because in many cases, ships just won't move. They won't go, not because they got fired on, but because of the risk of being fired upon. And so they have to announce very clearly, the straits are now open. We're not charging a toll. We will help remove the mines that they put in there, and they will not fire on ships.
But the president says they also need to make commitments on their nuclear program. That's what I'm asking.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
What commitments do they need to make in order for the strait to be reopened?
Well, the second thing they have to agree to as part of this is, so in addition to the straits, that's the predicate that opens the door to phase two. Phase two is they have to commit to very specific negotiations on highly enriched, the disposition of the highly enriched uranium that still is buried deep in a mountain somewhere. They have to agree on negotiating severe and long-term limitations and or cancellation of enrichment activity in their country.
In the second phase of negotiation.
By the end of the exchange, it becomes clear that the debate is about far more than shipping lanes. Rubio outlines a second phase of negotiations involving Iran's enriched uranium, future enrichment activities, and the possibility of sanctions relief tied to compliance. Supporters argue that broader security concerns cannot be separated from economic negotiations. Critics counter that prolonged disruption carries its own costs for consumers and global markets. The result is a debate that now revolves around three interconnected questions. Should reopening the strait be the immediate priority? Should sanctions relief be tied to nuclear concessions? And has the administration's strategy strengthened America's negotiating position or increased economic pressure at home? What do you think? Let us know in the comments below.